Welcome, everyone, both our in-person audience and virtual audience. Is it time for a jumping jack? How's the energy in the room? So welcome to the session, Shaping the Future of Data, Harnessing the Power of Data Products and Data Mesh with Unified Architectures. I was listening to a presentation and the speaker said they have 2,000 plus data products. So what is a data product anyway, right? What are some of the best practices around creating data products? When do you data mush versus data mesh, right? How do you come up with those unified architectures? So this session will address all of those questions. A few housekeeping details. This session is being recorded and it will be made available part of your symposium proceedings. There will be a Q&A at the end of the session. So virtual audience, please submit your questions via the Hua app, and live audience, please raise your hand, and I will bring the microphone to you. So we have two speakers, Animesh Kumar and Divya Joshi. Animesh is co-founder and CTO of the Modern Data Company. It's an evergreen name, right? You don't ever have to change it. He's also held various types of roles ranging from VP of Engineering, CTO, and architect, and so on across many companies. He is a founding contributor of Data Developer Platform Infrastructure Specification. And I really don't know what it means, but Animesh can explain that to you.
How long did you take to memorize this?
And Divya Joshi, she's a seasoned business development professional. She's driving data partnerships at ThoughtWorks, and she had worked for the top technology companies, including American Express. The best part of her profile is she was part of the inaugural batch of women at Indian Air Force. So that's a great deal.
Thank
so welcome both, and looking forward to a great session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I think you guys can hear me fine. Okay. So starting as we have been seeing since morning, everybody here is talking about data products. How do we bring product thinking? How do we go ahead, harness the future and everything around it? But before we go there, I would rather have us focus on the current infrastructure or current data ecosystem that we have. What we have today in our hands is essentially what we have assembled, bringing together multiple vendors and multiple tools into what we call a data ecosystem. And this data ecosystem, as we have put together, is forcing us to think about every data problem that we have to deal with in a project-based thinking. So every time you have to build a use case, if you have to power, let's say, a dashboard, or you are trying to reduce a metric, you do a vertical thin slice. You do not trust anything in the middle, obviously. So you go back to the source system, you start looking at where you can procure the data from, and start plumbing everything together, and end of a day, you serve that use case. And the way you have served this thing, and the code and all the things that you have put together, they are not reusable. So next time when you have to do something else, you go back to the source system again. And this project-based thinking is actually reducing ourselves into the trust that we are lacking in data and the business autonomy that we do not have. And hence, it drives the higher cost of all the data initiatives that we have to take today and the longer time to value that we are dealing with. So in order to deal with this thing, we really have to go back to the drawing board and start looking at it, how exactly we're going to solve it. And what we are proposing is to change the mindset from project-based thinking to a product-based thinking. What essentially is a product-based thinking? That you first understand what is the value you want to draw, who you are drawing it for, what is the purpose of it, how we're going to make sure that this product that you're building is going to be relevant today, is going to be relevant tomorrow, and how we're going to measure it, all the life cycle of this product thinking. And this is where, when you club all these things together, you have data product, which essentially is data added with product-based thinking. Now, let's talk a little bit about anatomy of a data product. I think a lot of us have attended few sessions where we learned about data products. There are a lot of internet buzz on data products as well. But essentially, data product is a combination of data, metadata, the code that you use to produce this data, and the infrastructure where this data product needs to run. This infrastructure has to be designed in a way that you are reducing the boilerplating that you're doing today. If you have to write Terraforms, if you have to write cloud scale scripts in order to run or provision an infrastructure to run your data products, we are still where we are today. So this infrastructure plays a very key role in order to operationalize the data product that you're building. And while you have built this data product, in the journey of building this product, you also have to think about, as I mentioned, relevance and the SLOs and all those kind of things around being relevant for the product. This data product also has to expose relevant metrics so that you can look at this product, you can ensure the relevance around it. And these metrics essentially are gonna allow you to control, govern, and reshape the shape of data that you're exposing, the SLOs around it, and of course, all the criticality aspect around the data product that you need to have in order to maintain the relationship. Now, once you have these SLOs and matrix put together, how do you enforce these metrics? How do you enforce that the consumption pattern that you're trying to establish, the uptime guarantees that you are going to offer on this data product are going to be maintained? This is where the concept of data product kick in. So data contracts kick in. And data contracts essentially are going to touch points on three interfaces of the data product. The input interface where you are consuming all the upstream data products to build your product, and the output data contract, which is your downstream data product users or data product developers are going to consume from your product that you're developing, and all the operational aspect of it, like making sure there is uptime guarantees are being followed, making sure the freshness guarantees are being followed, and so on and so forth. The things that are relevant around this data product. Now, when you put all these things together and start to look at the enterprise data that you have, what you end up with is an outcome-driven process, which is agile. So you are iterating over it. It is future-proofing you because the thing that you have invested, the code that you have written, and the way you have composed the data product, these data products can be used to further build more complex data products in the future. And the process also results in reusable components that you have built, and it guarantees the trust aspect of the product because it brings trust inherently, and it is also bringing all the context around this data. So when you look at the product holistically, you understand this product on its own. The value of this product, the context the product was designed in, and the trust guarantees around this product. Everything has been put together for you to start using it rather than going back to the source system. Now, using this thing, we have seen in the past, like there has been 90% reduction in time that it takes to implement a new use case. We don't really have to go back to the source system all the time. And it reduces 30% time, 30% total cost of ownership of a data product. And the future CDOs are gonna leave the tables behind when the Nero is burning Rome and data products are being saved. Okay, I'm gonna hand it over to Divya to talk about some real world use cases to establish how data product has changed some businesses in our hands.
So Animesh has already established how data products are important and why we need to follow them. I want to talk about two live case studies, two large organizations who actually implemented data products and how they reaped benefits out of it. Both the organizations are, sorry, Animesh, I'll need your help here.
Yeah, 1 second. No,
If you can do it for me, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. So both the organizations are fairly complicated, complex organizations. Both are platforms. So platform means they are connecting two sides. One either supplier, other side consumer. One first of these two is Delivery Hero. So Delivery Hero is in the business of food delivery and delivering other stuff. You can call it our Instamart here, akin to that at least. And this is a large organization serving around 2.2 billion customers around the globe. They are present all over the globe apart from North America, India, China, and Australia. So the extent of geographical spread is large, number of consumers are very large, and they grew rapidly, very, very rapidly. If you can move forward, please. They grew rapidly, And their growth was organic as well as via acquisitions. So this was complicated because the acquisitions were also of the digital native organizations. Some examples, Glovo, Food Panda. So these organizations came with their own individual tech platforms, data models, and their own systems and cultures that added to the complexity of the whole ecosystem. What did it mean? That means multiple tech platforms, multiple data stacks. Then there were strong ownerships of data models across these individual platforms. But at the same time, it was a unified organization. So there was a requirement for central reporting, and there was a need of exchange of operational data. And you can imagine in these kind of organizations, the exchange of data is internal as well as with external vendors, suppliers. There's a whole lot of ecosystem that's going around here. And in different countries, different regulatory systems. So it was, result was a data mess, not a data mesh. Why? Because two very important things. First of all, cross-platform analytical use cases were blocked. The second thing was the central reporting was ad hoc, which was not scalable. And this, I'm talking only about the analytical plane. So you can think about what happens in the operational plane. So here was the data mess. What happened next? Next, they created a solution, a data mesh-based platform, which was called a global data platform. I'll talk about three main components that this platform actually addressed. The first thing was they created a global streaming solution that enabled real-time exchange of operational data. The second thing, there was a tracking system for this global streaming system. And the third part was there was something that enabled exchange of analytical business use cases. So that tied up all these systems together. But this was not an easy journey. Next, please. And when all this happened, when they brought these all individual systems together, then they began their journey to create data products. And for that, only this tech part was not sufficient. First of all, they created data product adaptation strategy. Then there was cross adaptation. Then after that, data product utilization was thought through. Then the data product offerings were thought. And then after that, there was this tracking of uses of these data product. And this whole complicated journey was measured through 4 buckets of results. First of all, since I already talked about these individual platforms, next please. First was the consolidation, which enabled the cross exchange of business use cases and operational data. Second was efficiency, then productivity and reliability of data. All these matrices, all these KPIs went up. In addition, they reaped some business KPI rewards too. First of all, as you can imagine, with acquisition, the different clouds came into their ambit. So the organization was a multi-cloud environment. Whenever data moved from one cloud to other, they paid a cost. After creating this platform on GCP, the data movement was restricted to the movement of data products and the cost reduced drastically. That was one great benefit. The second thing was, because now there was a centralized reporting system which was not ad hoc, they saved operational cost. In addition to that, they also saved a lot of regulatory pressures. They were away from regulatory pressures, and their time to market increased. So these were very tangible benefits that this organization increased, but this whole journey took a long time to reach at the place where they are now. Second, I want to talk about an organization which is in a very different domain. This is called Saxo Bank. Again, a platform, an online investment bank that brings together two sides. On one side, there are the investors, mainly three types of investors. One are the retail investors, people like you and I. And second are institutional investors. And third are the high volume traders. On the other side of the platform are the banks like HSBC, Citibank, other investment banks who will provide access to the capital as well as financial products. And you can imagine this is banking, highly regulated industry. So the data that moved between the platforms had to be extremely kosher. When they started, the goal of Saxo Bank was to become whitelisted in the ecosystem of their partner banks. Basically, so the journey was envisioned with this vision of having a consumer persona that will feel at ease with the data product. So that means the data products had to be consumer aligned. Then the second thing was, they thought of data products, what it should be in a sense. Animesh already defined what data products are, but they wanted to become very specific, give examples as to what tangibly it will be called. They wanted to have some clear examples so that organization follows the right template. And then they understood that the domains will go through a journey. So they just took a step back and thought how domains will function will depend on how domains are formed. So they transformed their business functions into domains. How? By giving them engineering capabilities so that they can create their own data products. I'll talk more about it later. And then they specifically thought through the role of data governance organization. That's how it looked like. So first of all, there were data domain models. They were owned by the enterprise architect in conjunction with domains. How domains, who were the business functions, got there? Because the leadership gave them engineering capabilities by providing a new role of data engineer. As you can see here, the data engineers became part of the domain. Now, the enterprise data architect wore a data governance hat and became part of data governance office initially. And the job of data governance office was to identify data owners. Data owners and data engineers will create data products, and initially enterprise architect approved each data product manually so that they are aligned to Saxo's policies and they are consumable. So going back, they created a consumer aligned data product. For example, price fluctuation for the day was a consumable data product. And then I talked about the journey of domains, how domain became self-sufficient to create data products. Enterprise data architect initially approved each product, but as the automation in their self-serving platform kicked in, as the rules became more and more ubiquitous, that hand-holding was taken off. The role of data governance initially was overarching. They were micromanaging, but slowly and gradually they became more of observer. And as a result, by the end of the journey, Saxo Bank had very clear 3 outcomes. One, their cost of customer acquisition decreased drastically. One of the metrics was the onboarding time for a bank, which used to be around 1.5 months, came down to 1 week. The second thing was their operational cost reduced because this whole program for all the 40 countries where this bank is present was run by a team of 7 people. And the third was the ease of regulatory pressure because the data was kosher and they became much more at ease with dealing with all the regulatory compliance issues. The nice side effect of it was also good developer experience, so reduced time to market. So as I mentioned, these both organizations reaped great benefits, created visibility and trust in data, but it was not an easy journey. It was like whole earth rising kind of issue and took 2.5 years for these 2 organizations to reach where they are today. And there's a lot of pain behind it, a lot of consensus making, moving teams from their current role to the future role, making a consensus with business stakeholders, getting the budget, getting the buy-in. But not every organization, and you as CDOs, you may not have this leverage of 2.5 years, and you may not have a champion who can give you this much of latitude to spend time and money. Imagine a scenario when you have a tool in your hand that gives you capability to experiment. You can create data products within a span of a few weeks, show some result to your stakeholders, and then get the buy-in. How would that look like? I will let Animesh talk about it.
Thank you, Divya. So essentially, where she is leaving us is you can do data products, you should do data products, and it's going to transform your business. But then the journey towards building a data product is not easy. So what would it take for us to make data product development experience more effortless, quick, and effective? So in order to talk about this thing, let's think about this stack or this tool, as she mentioned, as a product. If we have a tool or a product in our hands, what are the basic tenets this product would and should rely on? It should be able to create abstraction on top of the infrastructure that you're dealing with. You may be maybe on cloud, you may be on-prem and whatnot. While you're developing your products, you should not be worried about where you are. You should not be worried or spending your time in boilerplating the underlying platforms or underlying clouds or on-prem infrastructure. So that abstraction is first. Second is composability. Whatever you are doing, you should be able to compose them together. A lot of this thing will be very familiar to what we have learned in the last decades of software development practices, where you write a code, you turn this into a library, and some other people are using it. This platform should be able to allow you or allow our data developers to build and function in a similar way, hence composability. Third should be flexibility. I, as a developer, should be able to bring enough creativity into the program that I'm developing, not just dragging something and then partitioning is not going to really take us far. And then this tool or this stack should be reliable for me so that I can experiment on it and I can push my data products into production without worrying and without losing sleep at night. And this platform obviously cannot have everything. So this platform should be extensible. So I, as a developer, should be able to bring additional features or additional capabilities there. Should be able to make this platform or this stack talk to other things in my ecosystem in a very seamless and less obtrusive way. And hence, this platform has to be interoperable with what we have in the system. This platform should not come like a shock in the organization and force you to disrupt everything, whatever you have done so far, and start reprogramming or rewriting your stuff ground up. As if like a new programming language has dawned and somebody is telling you to rewrite all your Java programs and Python programs into Go. That never works. It should never be looked at like that. So having these tenets in mind, what we are trying to have is a stack or a platform which is data first, not like a maintenance first ecosystem that we are dealing with today, where you have something for governance, something for cataloging, and something for pipelining and whatnot. And end of the day, what you end up with is a common denominator of all the things put together. And something does not work with a warehouse of your choice, so you bring some other vendor just to work with them, which does not work with the cataloging system you have, and the mess. So you keep on investing into maintaining the tooling that you have put together. This platform should be unified in a way that they all come together, like our bodies and stuff, and they should put data first. Tooling should be an enabler to the data ecosystem. And we must strive, this platform must strive to bring all the decades of best practices that we have learned in the software development industry into the data developer ecosystems. So let me introduce you to DataOS, which is a platform to create enterprise-grade data products, adhering to all the principles I just laid down. This platform is essentially designed as a set of primitives, very much aligned with the spirit of cloud ecosystems like Amazons of the world, where you have primitives around a general purpose, compute, storage, network, and stuff, which you then bring together, write a couple of Terraforms or declare stuff, and then you build an ecosystem that kind of works for you. In the similar spirit, this platform has designed a set of very low-level primitives designed around data discoverability, around data transformation, around querying, around policing, around governance, and so on and so forth, things that you really have to have in order to build the product. So you can compose them together. Think of it like how higher level programming languages evolved. Or think of how you build your Apple mobile applications. You don't really have to go back and talk to the camera hardware. You talk to the camera APIs. And then whatever you have done on the camera APIs, you have built a couple of filters, can be reused by some other application if you happen to release them open source, of course. So this platform has been designed in two different planes. One is the developer plane, another is the control plane. Control plane is where the organizational, the policy or federation kind of sits, where you kind of enforce all the federated policies, how people should behave, much like how you should write your code. Every function should have a comment, or every function should have a test cases. Those kind of a policy enforcement happens on the control plane, and the developer plane is where the developers live. And this is the plane where developers define the spec of the product, define different aspects of the product, design APIs and whatnot they have to do. And much of this happened declaratively. So exactly, if you draw the corollary, like how you work with data sitting in a database, you write a SQL program or you write a SQL script, which essentially tells the program what you intend to have. And the database figures out exactly how to run or generate a program to serve the request that you are trying to ask the system with using the SQL that you're running, right? SQL query. So you don't tell the system how, you tell the system what. This platform is designed is exactly in the same primitive. So you tell what needs to happen on the right-hand side, you define the spec, and start working backwards, rather than all the left to right that we do in today's era. And that's where your workload specification, environment management, deployment management, everything is there. And all the aspects of your storage, your workflow, your applications, or a data app that you're trying to do, or a data application which has a Streamlit application baked in this, you have an ability to deploy all of them together. While you're doing this, imagine having a Figma-like workbench where you're defining the end result of the data product that you want. This is the shape I want. This is the freshness I want. These are the kind of APIs I want to expose. Once you do that, the system allows you to quickly experiment with this thing, probably run a couple of user tests, exactly the way you develop mobile application on Figma, right? Once you are done with it, you are happy that this spec works for you. This schema, this shape of data kind of serves all the use cases that you have. Then you start working backwards and start plumbing the stuff that are missing from here. Now that we have Data OS, once you have this thing, the way we kind of try to define Data OS for data product is, this is the shortest non-disruptive path to a data product ecosystem. Data OS ensures that you do not really have to go and bring a massive change in your current ecosystem of tooling that you have. You may have varied different sources of data, where you are keeping your data and stuff. Data OS does not force you to migrate the entirety of your data into one central location before you start to make sense of things. Data OS allows you to iteratively look at the data that you have and pick and choose what you want to do with them. As you connect Data OS to your existing data systems, it intelligently starts to surface some intelligent information around it. So while building the data product is very, very assisted. So there is a fluid data developer experience. It comes bundled with an IDE. So when you're writing the program, it suggests what you should be doing next. It kind of reduces the cost of data product ownership, because you don't really have to wait 6 months to develop a product to a level before you can experiment. And if it does not work out, then your entire effort of 6 months kind of goes down in drain. It doesn't happen that way. You can quickly iterate if not in days, then in a week or so, you should be having a shape that you can start experimenting with it. And hence, the time to data product is very, very fast in this case. Let me summarize the benefits of Data OS, the unified architecture that I just presented. It is outcome-based, outcome-first data engineering platform, which improves your business agility. As I just mentioned, you start from the right and start working leftwards. So that way you define the shape. You first worry about the outcome. If you're building, Shujan, my co-founder and CEO, he has the favorite example of Customer 360. So if you want to build a Customer 360, instead of worrying about what customer data you have today and work from left to right, you figure out for your business what customer attributes are really relevant for you. And then you start working backwards. Do you even have data on them or not? And if you have, do you trust data on them or not? It start building product backwards from there. It is experimentation friendly. That means there are a lot of different design patterns that you can implement on top of it, hence flexibility that I mentioned about. So developers are not restricted to work in one way. Let's say Spark or let's say Flink or something like that. It allows you to bring different kind of an ecosystem experiences into data OS. It allows the data developers to experiment quickly and fail fast. It allows, once the data product is there, it allows the businesses to work with data product in complete autonomy from the developers, how they want to consume. Or there have been situations where you have created data products for a particular use cases and the business suddenly grows in a certain, spiked up in certain use cases. They need to increase compute on that, or they need to include certain other different use cases. Those things or those handshakes are very, very smooth. And as I said, like we are striving for minimal disruption, so it kind of acts as a modern layer on top of your existing data systems that you have, and start producing, valuable results off of it. It is extensible, so not just that you can extend features of data OS that data OS cannot do today, much like an operating system, hence the name data operating system, but you can actually build applications on top of data OS directly and have data OS run them. So let that sink in. So you have created, let's say, a data product which has a table. Now you want to expose a machine learning model on top of it, which allows you or allows the consumer to play with certain variables and understand how the model is performing. And for that, you wrote a very basic Streamlit app. You don't have to go provision a secondary EC2 instance, go talk to IT and get the whole flowchart figured out before you can deploy that application for your people in the organization to start playing with it. You declare it, you containerize it, let DataOS take care of it for you. And then, and last but not the least, like it brings the unified governance in place. So all aspect of data that you have around, from discoverability to security to reusability aspect or auditing or making sure the vendors that you're trying to share this data with not misusing this data. There are time-based access that you want to enforce. There are network-based access that you want to enforce. All those things are baked in the platform, because security or discoverability around data product cannot be an afterthought. Data product has to be by itself, bring the value so that it can stand on its own and stay valuable, and it can allow you to build further data products on top of it. Hence, this is one of the essential component. With this thing in mind, we have seen some tremendous results. Like in weeks, we were able to build data products for some of our customers, and we were able to show value which was impacting businesses. And hence, what we are going to do today is to announce the partnership with ThoughtWorks, where they are bringing their decades worth of strategic experience in data ecosystem, building these things together, and we bring the operating system and the tool around it, and together we're going to change, hopefully, the lives of CDOs and the data developers that we have in the world around us. Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay. Q&A time. So we have question from virtual audience. Why use data mesh versus other architecture options for delivering data products? Who wants to take it?
I can take it.
All right.
So data mesh.
Oh, you have.
Oh, yeah, I have the mic. So data mesh essentially gives you two different paradigms. What it is establishing is like you're building data product first in a decentralized way, where you are not enforcing a centralized team which is responsible for all the data of your entire ecosystem. That does not happen. The domain ownership needs to be enforced. And there are a lot of contextual, what we say is the tribal knowledge that lives inside a team or in a domain, which is very hard to bake into a knowledge graph system that we have been trying over like 10, 15 years to come up with different kind of a graph database, graph knowledge graph, semantic graph and whatnot. That never worked. So essentially, why not just understand and appreciate the problem, that where the knowledge is, push the development there. So do not bring data to compute, push compute to data. In the same way, do not bring knowledge to the central place. Get these distributed teams where the knowledge is around data. Empower them with data engineering capabilities, as Divya mentioned, for the two use cases that we talked about. Let them deliver it and give them a consistent way to deliver it. So the journey towards learning how to build data products should not be very steep. It should be very smooth, and it should come from their existing experiences. If you can enable them, then building and owning the products does not really it's not very challenging in a sense.
So let me add a
Sure.
business take to it. So the value of data is when it is in the hands of people who can draw insights out of it. That means if you give data to business people who can use it, then it is the most powerful one. I'll give you an example. I was at Uber. I headed their business development. I did partnerships. For example, I did partnerships with banks. And I wanted to see that the drivers that came from that partnership, is there a behavioral pattern with their drivers? Do they switch on their app from particular geography, or they switch on at some particular time? What do? I go to an analyst who will do an SQL query and get data for me, and that too when he likes my face. If he doesn't like, I'm out. And then that person, when all earnest, does not understand my context. For him, the data I want for the partnership perspective is same as what a finance person wants for incentive calculation purpose. My need is very different. So ultimately the data I get has the columns and the things that I don't need. And what I needed, the time when drivers came, switched on their app, is absent. So the data that needed to be used in the context was absent. So if you want data in the hands of people who will actually use it, who will have the right context, then you should go for data mesh.
So fit for business purpose data.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, and some level of standardization
Yes.
you pointed out.
Right.
Questions from the audience here? Okay.
Make him first. I could ask a question around how does the fabric fit into this? How does the data fabric fit into this?
Well, would you like to take it?
Yes. I mean, it has become a religious kind of a divide lately between fabric and mesh. So I wouldn't really go that deep. But based on my limited exposure towards fabric, what I understand is fabric essentially is more centralization of knowledge. Mesh is more decentralization of knowledge. What we need is centralization of ability to discover products that we are building, but decentralized way of building this product. So Fabric has some really good ways of looking at centralization of knowledge, but the way we are centralizing knowledge at the raw table level, if we push it up and start centralizing them at the data product level, then that thing would bring value for the entire organization to discover what is already existing and what is not.
Well, my main understanding of fabric runs from cotton to silk to rayon to whatnot. But I would like to put this understanding on top of it. Data fabric has a place irrespective it is data mesh or not, because this is one tool that can help you with structured and unstructured data both. This is a very different tool than a system which is called data mesh. This is the very fundamental difference of tool and system is the first principle for me. And then, of course, there are different layers to it, but I'm not the expert.
Yeah, I mean, what she just said, right? Data mesh is more like a thought process of an architecture that you should be designing. It is a lot of cultural movement around that needs to happen in the organization as well. Fabric does not really enforce a lot of those things. And a lot of companies have been utilizing it to their benefit, yes. But what we are proposing in Mesh is that you decentralize and push the development effort towards where the knowledge is and then reap the benefit out of it. So there is a place for centralization, place for decentralization, club them together in the best way.
Yeah, I have a question on how do you? There was a lot of talk in the presentation about the implementation methods and the kind of technical facets of a data product and all of this. So how do you, if you're trying to adopt this, what are some of the non-technical skills that are required to ensure that you actually have user adoption so that you don't build technically right but effectively wrong? There's the human factor side of it, there's business understanding, like you gave the example with the Uber, which is, in this case, they gave you what you asked for, but they didn't really understand the context of use. And you could follow all these principles and still get that wrong because the problem space wasn't well understood. So what are some of those, maybe in the bank situation, could you talk about some of the team members or skills or roles that were on the non-technical part of making sure that the thing actually got used and created the value?
That's a very, very pertinent question, because a huge part of, it's like an iceberg. Data mesh is an iceberg. The tech part is visible part. The very essential non-visible part is all non-tech. So both the organizations, in addition to other organizations that I have studied, have gone through this social journey. So there is a paper that I'm writing, and it is called The State of Readiness of Data Mesh. It will be published in a few weeks, and you will have much more details in that. But what I want to say is organizations have to create an incentivization strategy, because there will be lot of resistance that is very clear from lot of teams. Especially the teams who are performing very well would not like to let go of, because they are good at things. They're making things work. They will not let go of what they are doing. So you will have to do that change management. That is very, very important. I'll first talk about generally what you have to do, and then I'll give specific example of bank as well as Delivery Hero, how they did it. So that is one thing that is important. Communication is very, very important. Finding out right champions. So right champion is very important, because what we saw in organizations, yes, you need a right sponsor, a C-level or so, who will drive this across the organization. But at the same time, you need those, zealots, the champions at the lower level, who will just walk across the cubicle and say, hey, you owe me a favor, and today you do this for me, just because I am saying try this once. So you need those champions as well on the ground. So these are some of the first principles. Now coming back to how people did it. In Saxo Bank, they created a meeting cadence at very high level. So their COO was their champion. So first of all, COO gave this big communique that we are going to roll out this program, and this is how we will go about it. Then they found one particular champion function who was ready to get onboarded first. That was the first domain to get empowered with data engineers, create data products, and show the benefits to others. And this was a slow journey. Some people were really resistant, and they were left for the later part. Then this quarterly meeting was created, rather it was a town hall, where the teams presented their progress and how things have changed for them. They talked about that. What were the challenges? They talked about that. But that central, whatever was happening at the central level, was also accompanied by a push at a ground level, where people in their own capacity went and convinced their own peers in informal coffee chats. It was pandemic time, so everything was done on Zoom. But people did many, many informal chats as well to convert people principally to this new adaptation, because it was a really big journey. Does that make sense to you? Am I answering your question?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
And in Delivery Hero, again, so this thing was very much common. The two-prong approach of sponsor and champions was present in Delivery Hero as well. So their CTO was the champion of this. And very interesting thing about both the organizations is that people who actually initiated this change were at director level, who studied what data mesh is and convinced the C-level executive who became the sponsor, and then the whole change started. But since in Saxo, there were specific roles that were created, because as I mentioned, there was this chief data architect who wore 2 hats, moved between 2 functions. Then there was this new role of data owners that was created. So all that, they came out from the existing people. So initially, they were willing volunteers who were champions for the change, who were chosen for this. Slowly, when the success was manifested, other people got converted into it. So that was the journey in Saxo.
So there was tribal knowledge and context to the business use cases that through collaboration you're going to able.
Yes.
But just to add to what Divya just said, right? So understand, like few years ago or maybe a decade ago, like we moved from data centers to cloud, right? And that required a rethinking of whole infrastructure IT people that we used to put together. Developers were not allowed to deploy their applications into data center back then. It had to go through 3 hops of approval and some web archiving, and then somebody else retesting it, then somebody else deploying it. It was a whole hop. Now today, developers deploy their application in production pretty much every half an hour. That change required a cultural shift. That change required a right team change, right? So in this composition, we also have to look forward is like while you're building a data product, we have to start embracing the product level thinking. As if you're building a mobile app, do we have a data product managers? We need them. Do we have data product QAs? We need them. We need to find out these roles that fit into the journey of building a data product and fit them together. That requires cultural shift and also organizational shift.
I think the question was, how do you make sure the data products indeed satisfy the business users' needs, right? So once you...
Yeah, so essentially that's the point.
Stay relevant.
Yeah, exactly the points. If we take Divya's Uber use case, right? When she wanted this particular product in a way that would answer some of her questions, right? She could have gone to the data product shopping mart where she could probably have found a data product where she may have found the login time of these drivers. And if she could have found that and if she was able to trust that data, she could have used it, number one. If not, she could have raised a ticket to build a data product like that, which would have resulted into a pod with necessary people like a product manager, QA, developer, and whatnot, depending upon the kind of a product that we are building, which will build this application for this purpose with this use case in mind, and then she would be able to use it, corroborate it, trust it, and mark it on the catalog. So this is the whole journey. It ties up from both ends. But the intent right now gets lost because she raises a ticket and she gets back an Excel file. What is she going to do next month when she has to run the same report again?
Create another sheet on the same Excel.
That's what happens.
That will be hot mess.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would wonder about with that is that sorry, online people. The only thing I would wonder about that, though, is that that's kind of back to the assumption that the business user knows how to ask for, they know how to state their request as a problem and not as a solution, which is, I need request time, wait time, and whatever. And the person making it, the team, the data product team, they need to understand that, whether you call it a data product team or any other team, in order to make sure that you can do the thing, which is, I want to send a targeted ad to people at 5 o'clock that drive X kinds of car, whatever. Like, you had some business need to know that. And so I'm wondering, how does doing it the quote, the data product-y way change any of that? Like, where the translation need to, the problem space
Yes.
versus solution space and all of that, how does the product-y way change that?
So if we go into the Saxo example, there is a data engineer sitting in my business development function along with my data analyst. So now you see there is a separation between the data product and data infra team, which is the central team. This data engineer is in my team with my context. they understand my requirement much better than the previous time. Even if I am unable to frame it in a way that they understand it, there is still more context to them now.
Great, thank you. So I think the point that you're raising here is saying, though, that there's a set of skills, a set of capabilities that a product owner is required to elicit those requirements, understand the business requirements. So I think the tool supports that, right? But there are still those capabilities, the understanding of the business, that intersection of understanding the business, understanding the data model, understanding what types of analyses and how they impact the organization. So it is a bit of a unicorn skill, right?
It's having domain experts data product team as well.
And in a shape, you have some of those people in the shapes of data analysts that you have. Every domain and business function literally has them. They go talk to the data developers or data engineers who would then probably write a pipeline to bring that data in. So the hop between raw data and the business insight is like 4 or 5 hops with product in between. And if you have to build a product on top of existing ones, it's like 1 hop away. That's how we look at it.
I guess there's a whole set of product management skills.
Exactly.
Yep.
And where
Right.
do those come from if you're not going out and stealing them from software companies, where are the product management skills coming from?
You grow them. You grow them.
You farm them, but you have to have those skills. If you're building product, then you cannot build it without a
Yes.
product manager. As simple
Because,
as that.
yeah, of course, because there will be whole data PLC thing as well. Those products will go and retire.
Also the relevance aspect of the data product.
Exactly.
How do you ensure that the product you're building today is going to be relevant or is still relevant 1 month down the line, or do you want to retire it? Whole life cycle around it or reinvention of this product requires a product-based thinking and requires a person dedicated to think about it. Shujan, do you want to add something to this?
Hi, this is Srijan. I'm the other co-founder of Modern. Just to kind of answer what you asked about, the business team might not know exactly this is the shape of the data, this is what I want. They have a general idea what they want to do with the data. DataOS as a platform provides you a pretty comprehensive way to do an exploratory data analysis. So you can put a concept in the middle like a customer, understand what is the data I have around customer across my enterprise. How good is it? Who is using this data? Which other decisions are being made by this? What other data sets look similar to this that I could potentially use? So the more knowledge you provide around the data curated by active metadata management, the easier for your developers to fill those gaps. And I think the success would be on how comprehensive is your metadata collection and how are you surfacing it.
Any other questions? You can only ask one question.
So if I'm sitting here, and we built a bunch of data marts of data warehouses, and I've got thousands of data marts out there. So why now the data mesh, and how do I leverage my data marts, which are used by my business community, and now I have to think about this data mesh perspective. So what happens to my data marts?
I mean,
remain. Yeah, go ahead.
So essentially think of this way. If you have a mart which is bringing value and you are driving business decisions around them, turn them into data products so that you can start monitoring them and start ensuring their relevance over time. So data product is basically 80% cultural thinking and 20% tools changes, essentially. If you can establish and consistently keep generating value off of a data mart, that can be a data product.
And can I ask John, because John, I know you have a perspective on Data Mesh 2.0, and would you like to add something to it?
Yes, John.
Hi, everybody. So I'm John. I'm the Director of Data Analytics for ThoughtWorks North America. And, I think it's a great question, and I've heard this come up from a number of people, is do I rethink my architecture? And I think in the keynote this morning, I think the speaker brought up an excellent point of, hey, listen, let's not discard things. Let's not create friction and slow down our processes by discarding them. And I think to Animesh's point of, well, productize it. So what are the things you might have to do to productize that data mart? It might be around observability. It might be ensuring that it meets the SLAs if these capabilities don't exist already. It might be providing more information, more metadata, more lineage tracking about the creation of the elements within that mart. So definitely don't, especially if something ain't broke, don't discard it and don't replace it, because you could invest those dollars in improving services in other places. So we definitely, we appreciate and recognize that if individuals or organizations have investments in these types of solutions and they're working, let's not get in their way.
I'm not from ThoughtWorks, but I could add something to that. That's a very good example, right? In your example itself, you said thousands of data marts. So the product mentality is not on a particular sub-product. So you got to consolidate, you got to elevate up to domains. So that's what they're talking about. They have one more presentation about data products. So no company would have more than a handful of domains, right? So you build your data product based on the domain methodology. So you will get a lot of these modernized benefits of all these, before it was a mess to maintain 1,000 data marts, and then how much money you're investing on that compared to a handful of domains that you're managing. So there's a lot of your productivity when thinking that.
That's a great point. That's
Yeah,
a great
thank
point.
you.
Thank you.
So you can hire me if you want.
We'll co-opt you. Yes. XYZ numbers, but yeah.
So we do have a couple of more minutes. What are some of the roles that are essential as part of the governance office, or governance roles that are necessary to make this data product successful?
Do you want to take?
Yeah, take it, then you take it, then I'll add to it.
So there are two aspects of it, right? One is building the product, and second, maintaining the product. The building the product requires, obviously, the product manager, necessary roles around it, your developers. And most of the developer experiences, developers that we have today would be able to do data product and should be able to do data product, because non-disruption, right? And then data QAs and stuff around it. And then once the data product goes into production, how do you manage them is a completely different and govern. Like there could be organization where they want to have larger federated policies. For them, they need to design their governance office differently than organization where they give more autonomy to domains. They need to design their governance offices differently. But the platform should be designed in a way that you should be able to look at policies as if configuration. If you remember, like in the software development life cycles, we write our logic and feed config from the side. In the similar way, we should be writing our logic of data product from the developer, and all these aspects should be fed like a configuration. So, those push and pulls will be there. Divya, if you know.
Yeah, so that's exactly the same thing. In Saxo, they created these data owners who are essentially the data product managers, what you're saying. And then on the other side, there are these data engineers.
Yes, who are developing.
Who are developing these things. So exactly these two roles are essential. But yes, the role of governance office in both the organizations that we studied very closely was very, very important. Some of the governance meetings that required the oversight on the policies, so that the central government policy, the central governance policies are being observed, at least initially for the first year, were essential. So in addition of these roles that were created, the oversight of governance office per se was important. And as you saw that architect became part of governance office and manually approved data products initially till the time the culture was set up, that was also important.
And just to throw some icing on top of it, like beyond governance, once you're building the product, there would be some interesting roles that you will see in the future, like data storytellers, people who can take it and actually tell the story, build the narratives around it in a way that is more consumable. The whole intent behind building or bringing product thinking is to make our data more consumption ready. And in most of the cases, that storytelling is what we are missing today. All we have is Tableau dashboard.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Okay. Thank you both for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.